Hi, everyone. It's Karen
Good
and Neil.
morning, everyone, and welcome today. We're just doing a quick sound check here. Make sure that everyone can hear us, and we're
Just
coming
making
through.
sure. We're working two computers, so if you see me looking over here, that's what we're doing. So I just want to make sure that everyone can hear us. So if you can hear us, you will see on your sidebar you have a hand. If you can click your hand, that would be great, so we know that you guys can hear us. So we will wait for that to make sure that everyone can hear us, and then we will get started. I think there's a little bit of a delay.
A little bit of delay, yes.
Oh, yep. We're getting hands in now.
There you go. Up. Hands are going up. Hands are going up.
Okay, perfect. Just to kind of go over a little bit, a lot of you I know are familiar with Google Hangouts, but you have controls on the side. So if you need to chat or ask a question or anything like that, please let us know. So if for some reason you can't hear us, or you need us to slow down or something like that, let us know. Perfect. So we will get started. You ready?
Excellent. Let's go.
Excellent. So welcome.
Welcome again.
So we are so excited that you're all here with us to learn about TaxJar, what it is and what it can do for you in your business. But before we jump into that, I see that we have a lot of new people here with us. So we want to introduce ourselves to you.
So for those of you who don't know who we are Karen and Neil Gortzman, and our company is Consider It Made. And we have been sourcing, manufacturing, private labeling, and importing for over 35 years for all the big chain stores like Walmart, Michaels, and Toys R Us, and many more. And you can find us over on Facebook at the Private Label University. Now, we decided to break the secrecy code of private labeling and share with our clients and entrepreneurs just like you who may be thinking of starting an Amazon or online retail business, or even already rocking it on Amazon, or for those retailers who are trying to compete with the big guys, and to teach the steps that you need to source, private label, and import hassle-free so you can be successful on Amazon or in retail. And basically, we teach the steps that we taught the big chain stores that they are using and that got them to where they are today.
So it's pretty amazing because we teach you the real truth. And I say this with sincerity because the truth really, it's not really being told. We've noticed a lot that there are many, many courses out there that are teaching things that are only partly true. And there's missing information that literally can cost you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars in fines and fees. Or there's courses out there that are being taught by people who are learning for the very first time and then teaching you. And that to us, it's risky and our money is important to us. So we're here today to give you some valuable information. Now, if you're a retailer or an Amazon seller or an online seller selling online, then you're going to love this webinar because we have Mark Fagiano from TaxJar, and he's going to share with you information that many of you have no idea that you need to be responsible for. And I'm talking about taxes. And yes, to answer many of your questions, you have to pay tax on all the products that Amazon is selling through FBA. So, and it doesn't even matter if you live in the US or outside of the US. So Mark is going to talk a lot about this. And at the end, we're going to open up to a Q&A and you can ask away.
So the fact is anyone can set up an account on Amazon or open a retail store and sell a product. But it's your responsibility to know what you are responsible for when it comes to taxes.
Mm-hmm. So now we have listed over 200 products on Amazon. And although we only have a few items that are FBA, we struggle to keep track of what taxes we are responsible to pay. And I know many of you have the same issue. So we reached out to TaxJar to see if Mark would be gracious enough to share with our audience how TaxJar could solve the Amazon tax headache.
So without further ado, we are so thrilled to introduce to you Mark Fagiano from TaxJar. So welcome, Mark.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, great to be here.
So before we get started, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how your company got started.
Sure. I'm an entrepreneur for more than a decade, former kind of corporate guy who left that world to control my own destiny and start my own company. I've started a handful of companies for the last, I don't know, 12 years or so, and have really developed a passion around building products that help small businesses eliminate painful back-end kind of administrative things that get in the way of growing your business. Sales tax being probably the number one thing for online sellers. So really passionate about helping small businesses and helping them become more successful. Started TaxJar almost 3 years ago now, and we've been growing very quickly ever since. The product has really resonated with online sellers, and we're having a lot of fun. So really exciting. We got a great team, and customers really love the product.
That's amazing. And we thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to be here.
There's nothing like this out there, and it solves a huge problem. Huge problem. And, that's what, we work a lot with inventors. And one of the biggest things that inventors do are, they solve problems. So thank you.
Yeah. Hey, it's what I love to do. So my pleasure.
Perfect. So we're excited to see what you have for us today.
Sure. Yeah. So my thought was to go through kind of a typical presentation, goes through kind of the basics of sales tax, and then happy to talk about TaxJar and then answer any questions that work for you guys.
Perfect.
Right, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank
Love
you.
that.
So should we try the technology here and see if I can share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's try it here. Well, I knew that was going to happen.
The Star Wars effect.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's try something else. Can you see that slide? How about now?
Yes,
Yes,
we can see it.
Yep, that
Yes.
looks
Oh, you
good.
can? Okay.
Yep.
Maybe there was a delay there. Can you see the full screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I see we see the slides on the side and your screen.
Oh, you
we
do?
see
Okay.
your PowerPoint.
Okay. Still, that's what you see right now?
Yes.
There could be
but
a
it could be a lag.
Okay, let's wait a couple seconds and then I can try something else.
Okay. I think if you click on where you can pinpoint into the putting in just the PowerPoint screen.
Yeah, and that's what I have, but for some reason this always acts a little weird in Google Hangouts.
Okay, technology. I mean, everyone knows. There's nothing out there yet.
So all inventors listening, we need a new platform for live webinars.
Exactly.
Let me try one more time here.
We have patient students, so we're not worried.
Yeah, and everyone's saying they can see it. They can see it. We have a lot of things coming in here.
Star Wars again.
Star Wars
effect.
Yeah.
I love that, right?
The Jedi is at work.
Sorry about that.
No, this is good.
All right, so I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, there's a lag, so we're getting it on the other computers, but let's give it
All right,
another
let me try
second.
one more thing here.
Is that better, Karen?
Yes, that's good.
All right, this
is
isn't.
good.
It's not perfect, but I think we'll go with it. Sorry about that.
Oh, this is perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute us, so we won't be able to talk. Well, if you need to us, then I'll open up the mics. But I'm going to take us off the mics now.
Give you full
Okay.
mic.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks. All right. So, and then feel free to interrupt too if there's any sort of other technical issues. All right. So again, super excited to be here. I'm going to cover the general rules of sales tax. I'll talk about Nexus, collecting and how much to collect, and also the kind of the rigors around filing sales tax returns here in the U.S. I've got a bunch of resources I'm happy to pass along. And then again, ask me anything. Happy to take your questions at the end. This is a presentation I've given, numerous times. A lot of great seller groups like this one have asked me to come on and kind of share my knowledge, and I've continually updated this to really reflect kind of the most basic questions that a lot of sellers ask, especially geared towards Amazon. So if you're an Amazon seller watching this, there's a lot of good stuff here for you. So I'm hoping that it proves to be valuable for everybody watching. I already talked about myself. So the only other points that I'll make is I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax professional, but I have spoken to literally thousands of online sellers. I talk to tax pros, folks that work in the states, departments of revenue, auditors, etc. So I've put in my 10,000 hours, so to speak, and have developed enough knowledge here that to build a successful company. And I'm really here to share that knowledge with you so that you can make informed decisions for what's best with your business. So kind of one of the things that we do at TaxCharge, we talk to online sellers, our customers, literally every day. And I do the same thing. And typical profile of the folks that I talk to, people that are making a living online. A lot of them are what we call multi-channel FBA sellers. So what that means is they are selling on FBA, but they also have a presence in other places. So they may have their own website. They may still have a presence on eBay. They might be going to craft fairs or trade shows or something where they're actually selling in person. Bottom line is they're selling wherever their stuff actually sells, right? They want to be educated about sales tax. They have some questions about Nexus and how much they actually need to comply. And some of them are collecting sales tax, but they're challenged because they've got sales tax coming in through their bank account from Amazon. They may have sales tax in their PayPal account, and they might even have some cash lying around. And inevitably, they all just say, I want sales tax to go away. And I feel your pain, and that's why TaxCharge was started a few years ago. So if that resonates with you, you're in the right place, watching the right video, because I'm going to talk about a lot of those issues and how you can make decisions to get rid of those things. So let's kind of start at the high level and go over some general rules. If sales tax makes your head hurt, that is very common. So it's confusing, especially if you're not based in the US. It can be even more confusing. The reason being is there is no federal sales tax law, at least not yet. So the IRS doesn't have jurisdiction over this. They're not controlling sales tax like they do income tax here in the US. Instead, what we're left with is a system where 45 states and the District of Columbia have sales tax laws. So there are a handful of states that don't have sales tax. And basically what we're left with is 46 different sets of laws. So for the most part, 46 different definitions of Nexus, 46 different sets of rules around what's taxable and what's not. Rates are different, and what how rates should be calculated, and when sales tax returns are due are also determined by the states. So easily amounts to a sense of frustration and confusion. Well, so what is taxable? What should I be collecting sales tax on? And the general rule here is that tangible items are taxable. Some very common exceptions, especially for online sellers, are clothing and food. And again, that depends on the state where you're selling, whether or not those things can be taxable or are taxable. Services, for the most part, are not taxable. Tides may be changing there as some states are starting to tighten up their laws to figure out ways to get more people to pay tax. Shipping and gift wrapping also can be taxable depending on the state. So Nexus is really the whole ballgame when it comes to sales tax compliance. And what Nexus means is that your business has a presence or a connection in a state that's significant enough for you to be required to comply with their sales tax laws. So if you have Nexus in a state, you need to comply with their laws. If you don't have Nexus, you can do whatever you want. You can go do something else. And I'm going to talk in much greater detail about Nexus and compliance here in a second. In general, if you sell to a state where you have Nexus, you collect sales tax. So if you live in California, you would collect on items that are shipped to California. Remote sales, you don't need to collect sales tax. So if you live in California, you probably don't have Nexus in Washington. We'll talk about ways that you might, but you probably don't. Therefore, you don't have to collect sales tax. Sales tax is what's called a pass-through tax. Okay, so I hear some people say, well, I don't want to have to deal with sales tax because I don't want to pay it. And technically that's not right. So if you're handling sales tax correctly, you shouldn't be paying a dime out of your own pocket. Really what you're doing is acting as what's known as a collection agent, collecting the amount that's due from your customer and passing it along to the state. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as that, but that is the idea. So if you're doing it right, again, you shouldn't be paying any of your own money here. And one of the last rule is it's good news, is that sales tax can be automated. So if you're at the beginning of this process and you're really just trying to figure out how sales tax applies to you and what you should be doing about it, I can tell you that without a doubt, starting is definitely the hardest part, just trying to wrap your head around the whole concept. But if you can get through that part, there is light at the end of the tunnel because you can automate the entire thing and basically put it to the side so that you can focus on more important things like trying to make more money and source more products, or figuring out how to successfully private label. Okay, so now let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of these general concepts. The first being Nexus, and common question that I get all the time is, all right, I kind of understand the concept, but where exactly do I have Nexus? So some very common triggers of Nexus are things like retail stores, employees, salespeople, affiliates, trade shows, and drop shipping. So if you're doing any of these or have any of these activities in a state, it's most likely causing Nexus in that state. Now, all of those or a lot of those may not even apply to the folks that are watching. So those are kind of the more traditional triggers. The triggers that are more appropriate probably for online sellers, and the ones that we see at TaxJar a lot, are these two. The first is home or office Nexus. So this is where you live and or operate your business, which for a lot of us is the same place, right? So we're running our business out of our house. We've got our inventory maybe in our basement or a garage or anywhere we can store it, right? Well, that's Nexus. So the example that I give, the quick one, and I'm going to give more detailed ones in a little bit, is if you live in San Jose, California, and you sell out of your house. That means you need to comply with California sales tax law and collect sales tax on items that are shipped to California. The other one, and this is might be a shocker for some folks, is what's known as inventory Nexus. So this is where inventory is stored in a third-party warehouse. So the quick example is if you live in San Jose and you have inventory all the way across the country in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania says that is Nexus. So now you're required to comply with sales tax laws in both California and Pennsylvania. And I'll talk more about this in a little bit. Drop shipping is another common form of Nexus. I can say that in the kind of the grand scheme of things when it comes to selling online and sales tax, drop shipping is on the more complicated side, believe it or not. You know, if you're familiar with drop shipping, you know that two sales take place, right? Your vendor sells an item to you and you sell to your customer. The real key determinant here, to kind of play along with the theme, is who exactly has Nexus. And one of the things I highly recommend here is if you're in this type of relationship and you're thinking about complying with sales tax, it's really important to get a professional determination of a Nexus determination here so that you can get off on the right foot. Because laws are, again, more complicated when it comes to drop shipping and Nexus than just kind of your traditional other forms of Nexus that we've talked about. But at a high level, that being said, there are 4 basic drop shipping scenarios, and I'll cover them quick. Again, I highly recommend you talk to a sales tax pro here, and I'm happy to recommend one to folks who need one in this instance. So if neither the vendor or the seller have Nexus, then good news, no sales tax has to be collected. If the vendor has Nexus in the state where the item ends up, but the seller doesn't, then the seller will provide the vendor an exemption certificate. If the vendor doesn't have Nexus, but the seller does, and again, we're talking about in the state where the item is shipped to, then the seller would collect from the customer. If both the vendor and the seller have Nexus in that state, then the seller would provide an exemption certificate to the vendor, and then the seller would then collect sales tax from the customer. If you don't deal with drop shipping, you can delete the last minute from your brain, because that would be a favor to you, because again, it's a little bit more complicated than normal sales tax scenarios. So we'll move on. Okay, so if you have Nexus and you understand what Nexus is, what does that mean? Well, when we talk about compliance in a state, this is what compliance is at a high level. It means that you need to register for a sales tax license in a state. You cannot collect sales tax legally from your customers without a license. Once you have that license, then you can enable collection from, either the marketplace that you're selling on or your shopping cart, wherever you are. You can tell them you need to collect sales tax in that state. You're going to file a return to the state in some frequency that the state determines. So they'll tell you when they give you the license when your first return is due, and then you pay what you owe. Again, you're paying what your customers have paid to you. Important to remember that there's such a thing as multi-channel Nexus. So if you have Nexus via FBA, for example, and let's say you're in California and you have Nexus in Pennsylvania as well, you not only need to collect sales tax on Amazon, but you also need to collect everywhere else you're selling. So eBay, your own website. If you travel to Pennsylvania, you need to collect on those in-person sales as well. So Nexus is not unique to just the channel that creates the Nexus. All right, so we're talking about FBA and inventory creating Nexus. Well, where is it possible that an FBA seller could have Nexus created to them through FBA? So here's an updated map as of when we're recording this. All of the states in orange are states with active fulfillment centers that we know through crowdsourcing our customers' inventory is being shipped out of. The 2 states in green are states that don't have sales tax laws, so you don't have to worry about those. I will point out Virginia is a unique case because Virginia has recently come out with a ruling that says inventory in a third-party warehouse does not create Nexus. Now they don't mention FBA by name. They don't mention Amazon by name. In our opinion at TaxJar, the description that they use of the seller and the use case very closely matches an FBA seller. So we do tell sellers that there is some gray area with Virginia. With the rest of the states, there's no gray area. They have in their laws that your inventory in that state constitutes Nexus. So one of the things that we see is that map is going to become more and more orange in the years to come. And the reason being is because fulfillment is the biggest differentiator when you're a seller. If you and I are selling the same items and you can turn around things much quicker than I can, you're going to get the sale every time. Well, Amazon realizes that as well. It's in their best interest to build as many of those warehouses as possible so that they can get to 2-day, next day, same day fulfillment in as many areas of the country as possible. So they're investing heavily in their own infrastructure, and we'll have more warehouses go online in the years to come. The other thing that sort of complicates this is potential passage of federal and state legislation. So if the federal government gets around to quote unquote simplifying sales tax laws, there are a couple of laws that are technically alive in Congress, waiting to be discussed and potentially voted on. If those laws would ever go through, it would basically turn that entire map orange and would result in a lot of sellers having to collect and pay sales tax in every state, regardless of kind of the traditional definition of nexus that we've been talking about this entire time. Not something that you need to worry about at this exact moment, but something that you should be aware of if you're trying to track and think about complying with sales tax. All right, so we talked about nexus and how you gain nexus. Now, what about collecting sales tax? So, kind of said this already, but the golden rule here is that you collect sales tax when the item you've sold is shipped to a state where you have nexus. Okay, and I'll go through this via some visual examples that seem to help folks. So let's talk about Joe's seller. Joe's based in Akron, Ohio. He has nexus in a single state, so he's complying just in Ohio right now. Okay, he makes what's called a nexus sale. There's Joe on the left, and he sells and ships an item to Lakewood, Ohio. Because Lakewood is in Ohio and we know that he has nexus there, then he needs to collect sales tax. And I'll talk about how much he should be collecting in a little bit. Vice versa, it would be a remote sale, right? So if Joe sells to anywhere other than Ohio, I picked Massachusetts. If he sells to Mass, then he doesn't have nexus there, so therefore he's not going to collect sales tax. All right, so good news is his business is growing. He's now signed up and using a third-party fulfillment service, and they store his inventory in Nevada. So now Joe has nexus in 2 states, both Ohio and Nevada, and he has decided to comply in both of those states. So now his nexus, an example of a nexus sale looks like this. If the item is fulfilled in either Ohio or Nevada, it does not matter. All that matters is that the item ends up and is shipped to Ohio or Nevada. Then he's got to collect sales tax. So the point of origin is not as important in this scenario as the point of destination. A remote sale in this case would be a sale that's shipped to any state other than Ohio or Nevada. I'm picking a location in Iowa. He doesn't have nexus there, so he's not going to collect sales tax. All right, so now let's go to the big time. Let's say he's using FBA and he has inventory in 5 states. So now he has nexus in a total of 6 states, and he's complying in all of these 6 states. So this one's kind of comical, but basically a nexus sale is a sale that originates, really doesn't matter. Again, all that matters is that it ends up in any of those 6 states where he has nexus. So any combination, Ohio to Arizona, California to Ohio, Nevada to Indiana, doesn't matter. All of those are considered nexus sales. Therefore, Joe needs to collect sales tax. And a remote sale would be an item that is shipped to any remote state. So any state other than his nexus states, he's not going to collect sales tax. Okay, so that's collecting. Well, how much am I supposed to collect? That's kind of the next basic question, right? Well, the logic behind it is known as sourcing. So in the buyer's state determines the source, okay, or the tax rate. Now, the tax rate is usually a sum of kind of what we call applicable rates. So you may see when you're checking out online and you're buying something, you may see a single rate says 8.5% or something like that. Well, behind the scenes, that's probably a sum of different rates. It's a sum of state rate, a local rate like a city or county rate, and then there may even be a special tax mixed in there like an education tax or transportation or stadium tax, something like that. The two most common types of sourcing are origin and destination. Origin is a much simpler form of sourcing. This is where the seller's location determines the tax rate. So because the seller doesn't move around, most likely, we're dealing with a flat tax rate for his entire state. And I'll go through examples of this in a second. Now, unfortunately, there are twice as many destination-based states. Again, these are more complicated. This is where the tax rate is variable because now we are sourcing the tax by where the item is shipped to. So where typically where the buyer is. All right, so let's look at some examples. Let's look at an origin sale first. Texas is an origin-based state. There's the seller on the left where the item is being shipped to on the right. The sales tax rate charged on this sale is 8.25%, and that's based on where the seller is located in Irving, Texas. And you can see, even though it's 8.25%, there are various sub rates, I guess we could call them: the state rate, the Irving county rate, and then there's a mass transit tax that applies to be based on where this seller is located. So that seller is going to charge 8.25% on any item that he or she ships to customers in Texas. Flip side of that would be a destination sale. So now we're dealing with New York, good example of a destination-based state. The buyer is in Buffalo, buying from the seller in Stamford there on the left. So the item gets shipped to Buffalo. Now the tax rate is sourced from where the buyer is located, and the tax rate there in Buffalo is 8.75%. And you can see that's made up of the state rate plus the county rate. So that guy in Stamford, he's going to be charging a different rate, most likely, for every sale that he ships out to a customer in New York, because it's where the item is being shipped to sources the tax rate. All right, so how does this apply to Amazon sellers? Getting to the good stuff here, folks. The really good news is that you only have to focus on where you have Nexus. So Amazon will collect the sales tax for you. So a lot of the stuff we just talked about, all of the logic, they've got that built into a sales tax collection service in Seller Central. And it's very accurate. You can get accurate right down to the product tax code level. So in other words, it's really important to differentiate between a grocery item, a book, a hoodie, and furniture, right? Because all of those could be taxed in different ways, different amounts. Some of them could be exempt depending on what states we're dealing with. So it's really important not to treat all of your items the same, especially if you're selling a mix of potentially exempt items and taxable items. They'll also collect the local taxes for you. So all the stuff around sourcing about, is there a special transit tax, county tax, city tax, they do all of that automatically. The cost is 2.9% of the taxes you collected, which is minimal for all of the time and effort that they save you. So that's the good news. Now, the bad news is you have to enable the collection yourself. So I do unfortunately talk to, especially this time of year in January, a lot of sellers who will say, well, I thought Amazon was collecting the sales tax for me all along, and that is wrong. It's up to you to take the step to sign up for the service and actually enable the collection on a state-by-state basis wherever you have Nexus. By the way, you cannot collect tax on Amazon without a valid seller registration from that state. Okay, so Amazon does a very poor job of telling you how to collect the actual tax in each state. They allow you to enable it, but they don't tell you what the right settings are. They don't give you any guidance on where you should and shouldn't be collecting. And it's very easy to collect inaccurately. It's something we see a lot at TaxJar. So as a result, one of the things we did was we created this ebook, which boils down a lot of stuff I've talked about today, but more importantly, gives you a cheat sheet on how to enter and enable tax settings on a state-by-state basis. If you want to get that, just go to fbasalestax.com and put in your email address, and then we send it right off to you. So folks have found that to be super helpful. It's one of the first things we created as a company, and it has saved folks a lot of time. All right, so kind of back up. We've talked about Nexus. We've talked about collecting sales tax. We've talked about rates. Now let's talk about kind of things that happen after collection, like filing returns. How often you file sales tax returns depends usually on your sales volume. So the more sales tax you're collecting, the more frequently the state is going to ask you to pay. The deadlines are usually annual, semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly. The states do agree on all of those things. And they typically fall somewhere towards the latter part of the month. So where this gets complicated is you could be an annual filer paying on the 25th in one state. You could be a quarterly filer, even with the same volume, in another state paying on the 20th, and could be paying monthly in another state paying on the last day of the month. So it's hard to kind of keep in your head all those different deadlines and frequencies. Important to note that you combine and file a single return per state. So you're not filing one return for your Amazon business and one for your eBay business. You're compiling all those sales together and filing one return. And I also want to note here that you really need to file what are known as zero returns. So if you decide you're going to go ahead and comply and file returns in a state, then you better go ahead and file those returns. Even if you don't, for some reason, make a single sale to that state. And that does happen for various reasons from time to time for sellers. And the reason being is once you make that decision to comply, the state wants to hear from you. So if they say file quarterly, you better file something 4 times a year, or else they will actually penalize you for not filing anything, even if you didn't make a single dollar in revenue in that state. Texas is the most infamous for assessing that zero return penalty, and it's $50. Make sure you pay on time for obvious reasons, but some states will actually give you a discount for paying on time. It's somewhere between 1% and 2%, and that's free money, so silly to give that up. But most importantly, because if you're late, unfortunately, all states agree on this. They will assess penalties and interest if the return and the payments are made late. Some of the states will start assessing penalties a minute after midnight. So really in your best interest, don't give them any more money than they need to. And this is really where you're also dipping into your own pocket. Make sure you file these things on time. Filing returns in those destination-based states is a particular pain, and that's because the states require you to do a bunch of extra work. They're requiring you to calculate your taxable sales and how much you've collected for every jurisdiction in the state. So it's not enough for the state of Washington for you to say, I collected $500. They want to know how that $500 divides up amongst all of the counties that you sold to in the state of Washington. This is a nightmare and gets even worse if you are selling on multiple channels, because then you need to take data from multiple places and compile them and subtotal them up by every jurisdiction in the state. So here's, speaking of Washington, here's an example. This might not be clear, my apologies, but basically what we're seeing here is a screenshot of their filing website. And what it shows is that there are 5 jurisdictions, and the state is asking for the taxable sales in each of those jurisdictions. So you're probably asking, well, where the heck am I going to get that data? And I have a good answer. This is one of the biggest reasons why TaxJar exists. We automatically compile that data for you and give it to you in the format that the state requires. So in Washington, we're showing you the jurisdictional code that they ask for, and we're also showing you the tax sales in that middle column that will basically be the amount that you have to enter. And we're doing that on an ongoing daily basis so that, once you connect your Amazon account to us, you're done. You don't have to do anything else. We'll give you the data you need so that the returns can get filed a whole lot faster. Some sellers will ask about audits. The most important thing to remember here is save everything. Make sure you're able to prove whatever's on the returns that you're filing. So if you're claiming you did $15,000 in revenue in a certain state, you basically got to be able to show receipts for that. Or if you have deductions or exemptions or anything, you got to be able to prove those numbers. Sales tax audits are a lot more stressful than income tax audits, if you can believe it. So it's really in your best interest to stay organized, keep the data on file. So in case, God forbid, something like that ever happens, you can just lay it out and prove what's behind the numbers that you've submitted to the states. Okay, so if we were all in the same room and I threw up the slide and said, how are you feeling? Probably 95% of the people in the room would look something like this. So if you look like that right now, or if you've done that at some point during the presentation, that's very normal, and I'm here to help. Everybody asks, all right, what am I supposed to do? What are my options as an online seller, given all of the things that we've talked about so far today? And in my opinion, when this has been proven out with our customers, head in the sand is not an option. So if you're doing nothing, probably not a good idea, especially if we're talking about in your home state. So this is designed to be funny more than it is gross. But one of the things that we talk about is that best effort is much better than no effort. And here's what I mean. If you are doing your best to comply, that's probably good enough. The states know that this is complicated. They know that it's especially complicated for e-commerce sellers. And at the end of the day, they're thrilled to death that you're complying. So if you're off by a couple of percent by no fault of your own, then no problem. We'll take the money and we're not going to have an issue. If you're doing something shady like collecting too much and pocketing the difference, or if you're, vastly under collecting, then there may be an issue. And again, the more volume that you're dealing with, the more you would tend to be on the radar of a particular state. But there's no such thing as perfection when it comes to this stuff. Really important to keep in mind. And most of all, it makes zero sense to spend your valuable margin trying to comply. This does not have to be expensive and does not have to be time consuming. There's just too good of solutions out there to take care of this for you. So where do you start? How do you get started with compliance? For sure, my recommendation would be to comply first in your home state for obvious reasons, right? You're probably paying income tax there. You're already on the radar. You're a homeowner there. You've registered your business there. So it's not complicated for the state to put together that you're generating revenue and probably should be collecting sales tax. And then from there, folks say, well, okay, if I have Nexus in all these other states due to inventory, for example, what the heck am I supposed to do? Well, I recommend a strategy that's driven by risk tolerance, basically. So there's two ways to look at it. One is kind of the more conservative approach, which says, you know what, I don't like the idea that I'm not complying or following the laws in any state. I'm just going to go ahead and comply everywhere right now and be done with it, regardless of, you know, where I am from a sales volume perspective. And I get that. I think the more realistic approach is really based on risk tolerance, and it's more based on wait and see. So for example, I'm based in California. I know that I have Nexus in Indiana because of my inventory, but you know what? If I look at my sales numbers, I'm selling $100 a year to Indiana. It's just not a big revenue state for me. That comes out to maybe $8 a year that I should have collected in sales tax. First of all, if the state of Indiana ever found out about me for that $8, which is probably, the odds are against me, if they decide to come after me, which is another hurdle, that $8 plus some interest is not going to put me out of business. So I'm just not going to worry about it. It's not worth my time to go get that license and go ahead and register and collect. And that's despite the fact that I know what the law says. And I support that. I think that's the right way to approach this. Now, that being said, I'm going to keep an eye on my sales volume in Indiana. And when it gets to some threshold that I set internally within my business, my operation, then I'm going to go ahead and comply. So I'm just making up numbers. These are not hard and fast, but you know, once it gets to the point where I owe $100 a year, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm going to go ahead and get a sales tax license there. Other ways that people do it, they say, look, once that number gets to a point where the amount that I owe could put my business in jeopardy, you know, let's say it's $10,000 and I don't have that money in the bank, then I'm going to go ahead and comply. And by the way, TaxJar helps you monitor where you have Nexus and how much you should have collected over whatever period of time that you're watching a particular state. All right, so let's talk about how TaxJar makes all of this go away for you. So we are all about taking the pain out of sales tax compliance for our online sellers, especially. We're the leaders in e-commerce sales tax compliance. And we do everything, not only the reporting and filing that I've talked a lot about, but we also do the calculations for a lot of platforms and marketplaces and shopping carts that probably don't apply to folks on this call because, again, if you're using Amazon, they're going to collect it for you. We've got thousands of paying customers, again, that love the product. Here are some of the names. You may recognize some of these. And we integrate directly with these platforms, point of sale devices, marketplaces. And when I say integrate, that means you can connect your account on Etsy or Amazon, for example, directly to TaxJar. And then you do it one time, might take you 45 seconds. And then from that point on, we do the rest. We're pulling down your sales and tax data on a daily basis and updating your state-by-state reports to show you a lot of really helpful information. So for example, we'll tell you if you're an Amazon seller where you have Nexus. Okay, here's a report showing all of those states that have a badge next to them. These are the states where you're actively shipping items from out of these warehouses. You know, do you know where what your sales and taxes collected are by state? Well, we show you that on your dashboard. We'll also show you the all-important information, especially in destination-based states, of how much did you sell and collect by every jurisdiction in the state. So again, what we're doing is providing you on a state-by-state basis, whatever the state requires, so that you can file that return on your own. And this typically saves, you know, folks have told us anywhere from 3 to 5 hours compiling that data together. So every time you go to file, we're saving that amount of time. We'll also give you a report that shows you, are you filing accurately? So we'll compare, if you can see it, There's an actual sales tax collected report. There's also an expected sales tax due report. So we'll contrast what you're collecting with how much you should be collecting. Super helpful if you're not collecting anything at all and you are trying to figure out, should I comply in a state? Helpful if maybe you're collecting on Amazon and you're not sure if you're doing it right, or if you have to go to file an annual return and you've only been collecting for 3 months and you need to know what you should have collected the other 9 months. The other question I always ask is, how long does it take you to file? And again, that number ranges on average between 3 to 5 hours for your typical seller for every return to compile the data and actually get the return file. It takes a lot longer for higher volume sellers. So we also have what's known as auto file. In any of those green states, we'll automatically file that return to the state for you it's an additional fee. We're working on filling in the rest of those white ones with green. So we from end to end, we'll take this entire process off your plate so you don't have to worry about it. We offer a 30-day free trial. You don't have to put in your credit card. Just go to taxjar.com. We have both monthly and annual subscriptions, and the pricing is based on transaction volume. So for up to 1,000 transactions every month, our charge is $19 per month. It's to get 10% off if you sign up for an annual plan. And then if you decide to have us file the returns for you, it's $19.95 for each of those returns. So happy to share with you an exclusive offer for every new annual subscription. If you're going to start an annual subscription, a new one with us, we'll throw in an additional 10% off on top of the existing 10% off when you use the code private label. Huge believers in customer success and helping customers use our product. Here's our phone number. Call us if you have any questions. And I'd like to share some of the more helpful resources that we make available. We're all about educating folks, but we're on YouTube. For those of folks that are visual learners, invite you to go to salestaxcommunity.com. That's our Facebook community. I think there's 4,500 online sellers and tax pros on there now. Our blog is jam-packed with information that we release on every day. Not only the things that are helpful for folks to learn, but we keep pretty close ties to changes in laws and those types of things. And then there's the FBA salestax.com website that I talked about that has the quick reference guide for Amazon sellers. All right, so I know that's a lot to take in, especially in a short amount of time. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and hopefully that's been helpful.
Thank you. Can you hear us? Are we back on?
Yeah, sure can. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Perfect.
I was gonna have my hand up like this, like the other guy in the picture, but I think the key is here that for everyone who's on this webinar using TaxJar, you won't have those issues, and I think that's the greatest thing, especially since so many companies, every day are starting up using Amazon and using all the online platforms for selling. And they had no clue. And this is... I
mean, we didn't either.
We didn't either. Our accountant, of course, says, we hope that they're doing everything correctly, but now it makes even their life easier. And, much to their chagrin, of course, if we have TaxJar, we don't need them as much for doing that. But it makes someone's life so much easier. And as people are making, in some aspect, they're making millions of dollars a year. If they're not filing it correctly, they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The presentation was fabulous, by the way.
Great. Thanks.
It was really great. And again, thank you for extending that 10% off for everyone. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. My pleasure.
Thank you. Not to interrupt your
we do have a bunch of questions that did come through, some by email, some on the chat. I know there was a question that came up about Costa Rica.
So again, if anyone wants to ask a question, there's the question tab you can click. It's the question mark. and put your questions in there, or you can do it on chat. It seems a lot of people are doing it on chat. So here's one here. If you go start with the first ones.
Here's a question that came in. It said, a question for TaxJar. I suggested to an Amazon seller that I met at a business conference that he used TaxJar, and he told me that the sales tax laws aren't anything to worry about as they are not enforceable. What's your take on this?
Let me see if I can read that.
See that one up there?
Yeah.
So
It was in towards the beginning.
I suggested to an Amazon seller. So, we do hear this from time to time. From my perspective, there's really no debating the law. The states have written into their laws that there's absolutely no debating that businesses are responsible for collecting sales tax from their customers. There is, in some folks' opinion, some gray area around the nexus laws. There's not, in my opinion. So I don't agree with that. Where I do agree is to what level of compliance do you have to go to? And I think that needs to be on a case-by-case basis. For sure, I think you need to comply in your home state. I don't think there's any arguing that whatsoever. What you do from that point with other states, despite what the law says, it's ultimately your decision. So, I talked about kind of my philosophy on how I would handle that as a seller. But yeah, I think for the most part, I don't agree that it's nothing to worry about. Yeah.
So
that's right.
Until someone comes after you.
Yeah. So anyone who's selling on Amazon or and if we dedicate it specifically to Amazon, if they're doing a substantial volume, they shouldn't expect that Amazon is taking care of all the sales tax. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you make your first sale, Amazon's not going to do anything until you enable sales tax collection. So whether you do 3 sales a year or you're doing 40,000 in a month, until you press the button, so to speak, they're just going to leave it all to you, and they're not going to do a single thing.
So there's a word to the wise. If someone's doing, $10, $20, $100,000 a month, and they didn't click on that part with the Amazon, whatever, all the paperwork they had to fill out, then obviously they're going to be in trouble if the tax man comes around.
I mean, it's doing business. I mean,
Right.
You're doing
It's all part
business.
of any business.
It's part of business, and it's your responsibility as a business owner to be responsible for your taxes, period.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. It's unfortunately part of running a business. It applies to running an online business, and unfortunately, it's messy and it's painful, which creates opportunity for companies like ours, right, to try to fix that problem. And by the way, do I have the right settings for screen share here, or?
You do, yes.
Yes, you're
Yes.
on. We see you.
Okay. All right.
So there's a question.
So there's, if you want to scroll down a bit, there's another question. Do you want us to read them, or can you see them?
Someone
yeah, I can see
from
him.
Costa
Yeah.
Rica.
So here you.
Okay. Sure. I'm from Costa Rica and I'm selling on Amazon. As what I know, I don't have to pay taxes in the U.S., only my country of residence. So if we're just talking about sales tax, unfortunately, that's not true. Basically everything that I presented, especially when it comes down to Nexus, does apply whether or not you're based here in the States or you're based abroad. So if you are based in the UK or Costa Rica or anywhere, and you're using the US FBA service, you are creating Nexus here in the States. Everything I talked about just in terms of compliance, that applies to you just the same as if you were, sitting in Texas or California or something like that.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big issue. A lot of people feel like they've been exempted because they don't live here.
Yeah.
And that's
so it applies to anyone, even if you're in Canada, Mexico, the UK, Japan. If you're selling FBA on US territory, you have to be compliant and pay taxes.
Well, if you're selling, but if you are If you're storing your inventory in the U.S.
Right.
in a warehouse, then yeah. I mean, if all of your operations are in Costa Rica and you have customers in the U.S., well, that's different. Then you're fine. But if you have any of the Nexus triggers that I talked about, employees or inventory or affiliates here, those are things that trigger Nexus and that would cause you to have to then comply with, state or states sales tax laws that you have that connection with. But again, if you are 100% running your business out of your own country and you just happen to have customers in the US, then you're fine.
Perfect. Thanks for clearing that up. That's
Sure.
good. I'm trying to find, there's a couple other questions down here.
So
about 2015 sales.
Are everything work the same way if a seller is international? So that's what we just talked about. Okay. And then the next one.
Okay. Yeah. So will it sync to 2015 if you get it now? Okay. So we're talking about TaxJar. So with your 30-day free trial, we download the last 60 days of data from the date that you start the trial, and we'll download every day going forward. If you upgrade to a paid subscription, either an annual or a monthly subscription, we will automatically go back to 2015, at least as of the time that we're recording this. So if you're looking to file, your January return and you become a paying customer, then we will get you all of that data that you need for 2015.
Okay, perfect.
And I had an email that came in here. Someone from overseas. They operate their company out of China. They do ship FBA to a Amazon warehouse. Why do I still have to pay taxes in the US? Will TaxJar handle it if I'm even in China?
Okay, so why do they have to? I mean, we've covered that a few times already. The fact that they've got their inventory in an FBA warehouse constitutes Nexus. The states don't care if you are located in the state or if you're located, in any other country. So no debating that. In terms of will TaxJar help, we will compile the data the same and put together the reports that are needed to file the returns, just like if you were based here. We can file the return for you, even if you're based in China, but you have to have a US-based bank account. So the states, for the most part, will not accept ACH payments from foreign bank accounts.
Okay.
So if you click over to the questions tab, there's a bunch of questions over there too. Kind of going to be jumping back and forth a little bit.
Is that the QA?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see them there?
Yeah.
I applied for my seller's permit.
Sure. I applied for my seller's permit in California on October 26th, but have not activated sales tax in Amazon. So I haven't collected any sales tax. If I go in and activate today and start collecting, am I going to have to pay those back taxes?
Good question.
Yeah, good question. Probably. It depends on the exact date that you put in on the sales tax permit. If it was, let's just say it was October 26th, then yeah, once the permit was activated, you were expected to collect sales tax from the day that it was activated forward. So if you were not collecting, then you would be responsible for, unfortunately, paying those taxes out of your pocket.
So they'll have to go back and actually calculate every sale they made to put it in to make it authentic, or at least make it legal.
Yeah, they would, October 26th to, today, whatever that is, a couple of months. Yeah, they would be responsible for going through all of those sales and figuring out what should have been collected. And again, that's something TaxJar does automatically. So if he were using TaxJar, it would take him no time to do. Otherwise, he needs to go sale by sale, look at the applicable tax rate, and then start adding that up.
And now I'm seeing everyone go like this.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a perfect reason why everyone should be using TaxJar.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially in California. California is, even though I live here and I love being here,
Mhm.
it's one of the harder states to file for. It's just I don't know why anybody in their right mind would want to go into the BOE website and file that return. It just takes too long. It's too complicated. And we've worked really hard to simplify that.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. It just, it's peace of mind and not having, everyone is so busy day to day in their business, doing their stuff. And, every little bit of help is needed. And if, these opportunities come up, I mean,
especially
to solve a problem.
If your business
grab
is
it.
growing on Amazon, which many people, that's what they're, they want to concentrate on. Even if they have another job and their Amazon business is really taking off, why should you have to worry about taxes? That should be the last thing that they should have to focus on. So,
Right.
And no one wants to think about taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not.
No, right. I mean, it's sort of business 101, right?
Yes.
Your time as a business owner is extremely valuable. You're really doing yourself and your business a disservice if you are spending a lot of time on things that you can, for an efficient price, outsource to
Absolutely
vendors, right?
And the price is
the price
great,
is so low. It's minimal for anyone who's
Yeah.
doing any business on Amazon.
Right.
which is There's
There's
another
another question right below that
here.
one, if you can
Actually,
see.
there's a bunch of them.
Okay, sure. I have Nexus in 26 states and selling a lot on Amazon. How long will it take me to set up TaxJar? How many hours? Just setting up your account and connecting your Amazon account to TaxJar, let's see, probably would take a minute and a half, something like that. So, yeah. It's pretty easy. Yeah. It's not hours. If he's asking for anything beyond, I don't know if he's talking about any factors beyond that, but just to set up your account and get that connected and for us to start downloading and giving you reports takes literally no time at all.
Wow, fantastic.
That is so nice. So nice.
Do you have to fill out the tax code for every listing in order for Amazon to collect sales tax? So you don't. Amazon will collect even without tax codes. They will. You can. The right way to put this: have a default tax code that you can pick right off the start, whether that's AGEN tax, which says to collect tax on everything. Or the opposite of that, which says to collect on nothing, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. But so you don't have to go in and set a product tax code for every single item sold. But if you are selling a mixture of different items, some of them may be exempt in some states, some of them not, that's when I advise you to go ahead and update the tax codes. Because again, if you don't do that, Amazon doesn't know the difference between, this microphone and this pen and this shirt, right? Which could all have different taxability rules in different states. So you're basically tagging that item to say, hey, look, I'm selling this shirt to Massachusetts, and Amazon's doing all the very quick work to say, okay, is that item taxable or not? If it is, we'll collect this much in sales tax. If it's not, we'll just ignore it and not collect any at all. So it comes down to volume, and you want to be collecting as accurately as possible. And if you're selling a mixture of taxable and exempt items.
So I got an email that came in here. It says that they're a vendor on Amazon and we sell to schools. Some of the schools have questioned the sales when the shipment is sent out. Schools do not pay tax. How do I handle this?
So, yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. There are exemptions. So education, schools, sometimes religious organizations, they can be exempt from sales tax. So if they are claiming you're selling them something, and if they're claiming they shouldn't have to pay any tax, then they are required to provide an exemption certificate, which basically says to you, hey, we're we're exempt from this. We don't have to collect anything. We don't have to pay anything. So
if they keep that on file when it comes to, if that's one of the sales that they list through TaxJar, do they just, how do they go about as far as
yeah, so I need to know a lot more about this particular case, but the bottom line is the buyer has to prove their exemption status, for lack of a better way to put it. They would do it through an exemption certificate, and then how that seller handles that on the back end really would depend a lot on. There's a lot of different factors.
Okay.
So
it's, keeping paperwork in order. So making sure they have certificates on file, making sure their business is organized that way, because if they are distinguishing themselves for nonprofit associations or hospitals or schools, then of course I'm sure they're set up that way. And of course they should make sure they have all the documentation for it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. So both on the buyer and on the seller side. I mean, both sides need to be organized in that way.
So if could they reach out to you then if they have more questions and more with regards to
they can email us at support@taxjar.com. Happy to either try to answer the question or put them in touch with somebody that could answer it if we can't. So
great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And I should mention, we've been hearing, just so people know this as well, we've been hearing a lot about the support that you offer.
Oh, cool.
And
it's exceptional.
a lot of people are very happy. And that's one of the big things that I find with a lot of programs. If you don't have the support, it could be quite frustrating. And you guys are doing a great job with that. So
yeah, thanks. That's one of our core values. It's kind of a no-brainer, right?
You think?
Because everyone knows when you call the IRS, you get no answers.
Yeah, if we don't treat people well, we're dead. So, and we've all been on those calls with various vendors who should go nameless, and that's not the way we want to treat people. So it's not the way we live on this planet. And it's just in our best interest to do that the right way. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's important. So you have.
We're just checking here.
Just checking questions. I think we answered these. So if anyone has any other questions, please type them in either in the chat or the question box. Seems like we're kind of back and forth. And I know we're in a bit of delay. So
yes, it does say that people are. Here's a guy who said, "I'm signing up today." So he's.
Yeah. So it's just.
Yeah. Right.
I just did something to the question box. Sorry. I lost that question, but it looks like it's in the chat.
Sorry. Where on the BOE website in California do I find how frequently I have to file? So if you are already compliant in California, you probably have a login to the BOE website, in which case you can log in, and if there is a return due, it will tell you when that is. So most likely, as we record this, you'll have one due February 1st, which is next Monday. Let's see, if you're kind of just wondering about the frequency in general, if you go to, actually I can type in here. If you go to taxjar.com/states, whoops, if I could type. We have pages for every state that usually talk about the filing frequencies and what's behind it. Whether there's sales volume or whatever the scenarios may be. So those are two places you can go.
Okay, and then will TaxJar tell? Is that it'll also tell when to file?
Yeah, so we show you the deadlines right on the dashboard of when your next returns are due. If you're using our auto file service, we don't really tell you when to file because we're doing it for you. We'll just say, hey, look, you've got a return due in California on the such and such a date.
So nice.
The filing process has begun, and we're about to file that return for you.
It's so nice. Like one last headache. So nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I have another email came in here, and it says, if I didn't check the spot when I filled out, I'm going to read through this. I had an assistant that filled out the documentation. I'm not sure if they did it. What will happen now? I can still sign up for TaxJar. Is Amazon going to question if I didn't fill it out? I don't think they're asking like a 6-part question here. So I guess they're asking if they didn't check that box, if they checked it now and signed up for TaxJar, then any of the sales starting from the time that they went back into Amazon, I guess their other question is, can they go back into Amazon and check that box now?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm hearing it right, but they can go in and change their settings in Amazon for tax collection at any time. I think it takes 2 or 3 days for the changes to take effect. So, if they're not collecting enough, they can certainly go back in there today and change that.
But they're responsible for anything prior to when they check that.
Yeah. So, if you owe $100 to California and you only collected 50, whether that's your fault because you didn't enter it incorrectly in Amazon, or for whatever reason, once you get through that filing on the BOE website, you owe $100, you'll need to pay that $100. And unfortunately, $50 of that would come out of your pocket. So it is certainly in your best interest to make sure that you're collecting accurately as soon as possible so that you can minimize the amount of time and money that you would have to pay out of pocket, and you can just be done with it and let Amazon take care of the rest. And that is one of the reports that we have on TaxJar to make it easy to be able to tell if you're collecting the right amount or not.
Excellent.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Amazing. Again, amazing.
Yeah,
this is great. So
this has
great.
been valuable information for everybody. I'm sure you hear that all the time, and
some people might be shocked. Shocking information for some people.
Yeah,
but
unfortunately.
But like Mark said, don't worry, because once you sign up with TaxJar, all your headaches will go away.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Absolutely. So we have one last question here. Do you see that in the chat?
Yeah, I'm on. What you have on there in regards to how I'm going to file. Brandon, are you asking for your exact frequency right now? Like, are you wondering when the next time you need to file?
He's probably typing.
Or it might be a delay.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have a login to the BOE website? Okay. So log in to the BOE website and click on the there'll be a link right away on filing a return. And if you have a return due on February 1, it'll say, you need to file this by February 1. If your deadline is something other than February 1, it could be in July, for example, then it'll say you don't have any returns to file, some language like that right now. So that's the easiest way to find out. The other thing you can do is just call the BOE. Our records indicate that you have. Yeah, so you're all set. Have you filed any returns so far, Brandon?
The delay.
I'm going to guess no.
Yeah.
This is fun. I've never done this with you.
Yeah, it's like you can talk and then you just
real-time support. Okay, no. Yeah, so your first return's probably due in July. You're probably on a fiscal annual deadline. Don't ask me how I know that. But yeah, so if it says you don't have to file anything right now, you're golden.
Yay.
I think Brandon's going to go have a drink right now because he's going
I don't blame him. That one for me.
Seriously. Perfect. Well, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
We want to there's something just popped in here. So we want to thank you so much. I mean, amazing information. We are so excited to, go and jump on the website ourselves and see what we could play with.
And we encourage everyone who's on this call and on the webinar and on the recorded part, sign up with TaxJar. As you can see, it's going to save you hours and hours of time. It's going to take away any headache you have, any questions you have about taxes. It's going to be done for you.
Because the bottom line is no one wants to deal with taxes.
Right.
So
your job is to sell products, source products, and do business, and not have to worry about taxes. And I think TaxJar has done that for millions and millions of people. And I think it's just going to get better for your company.
So thank you, Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time today, and hopefully that was helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
and have a great week, and thank you again.
And we just want to thank everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here.
Come over to our Facebook page. It's the Private Label University, and you'll see tons of information there. We're here to help you.
Yes.
As you know, we mentioned.
As we did today.
Today, we're here to help you save money and make your life so much easier.
Yeah. And make your business successful.
Perfect.
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
You. And everyone actually will be receiving an email, and in the email you will get the replay. So then you can watch and go through this
over and over.
Take your notes. So again, thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Have a great week.
Take care.
Bye-bye.